Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Louisville Forum. I'm Greg Condra, our 2017 president. We meet on the second Wednesday of every month at noon at Vincenzo's restaurant. The Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public issues group founded in 1984. Louisville Forum hosts debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. Although we may take up issues that have a national interest, we try to highlight the local perspective. For more information on the Louisville Forum, our programs, or to make reservations, please visit our website, louisvilleforum.org. Today's speaker is Louisville Mayor Greg Fischer. We spoke at Churchill Downs this last week, and he asked, Greg, should I keep it milquetoast or try and be a little provocative? And I said, let's go for provocative. You know, whatever you want to say, we'll hear it here first. There's a lot going on. There is the so-called war on Louisville bill coming out of the State House. There is the school system's reaction to the mayor's stance on charter schools. There's crime, there's property tax issues, there's allocating money for bike lanes and potholes. There's a lot to talk about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor and write your questions. They'll be picked up later. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, everybody. Here on what now feels like we're moving into summertime. Could have used this weather last week during the Derby, but everybody had a big time. So thanks, everybody, for coming out. And I want to thank the Louisville Forum. This has been a great gathering for the city now for 33 years and counting to host and debate lots of discussions that affect not just our city but the country as well. And what I like about the Louisville Forum is the nonpartisan way that you all go about addressing all these issues. I think we all long for a little more nonpartisanship, especially at the federal level, somewhere at the state level. Now at the local level, you know, we just get things done. We are totally nonpartisan. We take care of business day in and day out. Seriously, it's a lot harder to be partisan at the local level with the issues that we deal with at the council in the mayor's office. So let's go back. It's been a little while since I've been here. Last time, it was my first year in office. So we were still coming out, or starting to come out of the great shadows of the Great Recession. Unemployment in our city was high. It was a little bit over 10%, and there was still a lot of anxiety about the future of the country, certainly the future of our city as well. So the mood in 2011 was really pretty tenuous. What direction are we going to go as a country? But I knew then that we had to be guided by some solid values no matter what we did, and I'm a business guy, an entrepreneur that just happens to be mayor. So I said, when I speak to the city for the first time, I wanted everybody to know what I stood for. And I said that my administration would be guided by 3 critical values, and I talk about them every day, and things that I believe in, and those were going to be the values that I think endure over time, and they were going to be the filter on how we would make our decisions day in and day out. So what I shared was that I wanted to make Louisville even greater in a couple areas. One is a city of lifelong learning. Second is an even healthier city. And third, an even more compassionate city. So when you see us making our decisions, it's circled around all 3 of those values. And some folks, frankly, questioned my focus on those values, particularly given the economic concerns of the time. And there was a lot of questions about this compassion. What are you doing talking about compassion? And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But things have really changed in 6.5 years, both in the country and certainly for us locally here as well. And we have done it together. Anytime an elected official gets up there and says, I've created 63,000 new jobs, and that person thinks that they've done that by themselves, throw rotten tomatoes at them. Now hopefully they haven't ruined it, but as a city, what we've done in these last 6 years is we have created 63,000 new jobs, 2,600 new businesses. And we just had a wonderful, though wet, Kentucky Derby. And thanks to it and so many other events and the growth of bourbonism, we're now welcoming 24 million tourist visits a year. And a lot of people kind of scoffed at the bourbonism thing. But it's unique and authentic to us and is creating our first ever 24/7, 365-day-a-year tourism experience. As a result of that and many other things, you're seeing this explosion in construction in our city. $10 billion in capital construction going on in the city of Louisville as well. Tourism is fueling part of that. That's why you see 25 new hotels either under construction or planned right now. They're from the big hotels like the Omni Hotel and Residences, or a big project like the Kentucky International Convention Center. Both of those will open up next year. To smaller boutique projects around the city as well. So there's a lot going on, and it's going on in all parts of our city, from downtown to east to southwest to West Louisville also. As you can imagine, as a result of that, many other things, our unemployment rate has been cut from 10.4% to 4.7%. Household incomes and median wages are up. So it's not just the number of jobs, we've got to make sure people are making more money as well. And in 2015, more than 10,000 Louisvillians worked themselves out of poverty, and more than 7,000 Louisvillians joined the middle class as well. So we're seeing an increase in median wages in our city, which is a specific economic development strategy that we have. So that's some of what's happening relative to economic terms for our city, and a lot of that is summarized in this annual report that we put out every year that's at your table. So please take that home and take a look at that as well. So that's the overall picture, particularly in terms of our economy, and I certainly believe in accountability and transparency. So I wanted to kind of run through each one of those values and give you a little flavor for how the city is doing. So first, let's talk about lifelong learning. This is super critical because what we know, obviously, the world is changing at a faster pace than it ever has. So if we're not a city of lifelong learners, we don't have people that can adapt and thrive. So learning does not stop when school stops, obviously. We are in school every day. The question is, how are we learning? Now, we can formalize some of our approaches to this as a city, so we make sure that everybody's got a chance to succeed. So we established our Cradle to Career system of lifelong learning to help connect students, parents, schools, and employers so we can create a path for more citizens to find reliable and satisfying jobs here in their hometown. That started with the 55,000 degree work, which when we started we had about 39% of our adults with a college degree. Now we have 45%. So instead of being a little bit below the national average, now we're 3 points above the national average. So that 55K then kind of spread to this total system of lifelong learning from early care and pre-K all the way through 21st century careers. So we're making good progress, measurable progress as it relates to education. And at the end of the day, education really is the solution to most every problem that we have. I wanted to make a visible commitment to learning as well. And that's why we've put so much attention on our libraries. Because our libraries, I believe, are hubs for lifelong learning. And it's where people can connect, not just to check out books now. That was the only function back in my day. But now they're community centers. There's centers for high-speed internet for people to go and look for job openings and develop new skills. So the first and only really large capital project for my first term in office was the development and construction and opening of the Southwest Regional Library off Dixie Highway in 2014. And it's been a huge hit with the public. And then we're about ready to open in Okolona the new South Central Regional Library as well, that integrates a really innovative arts program in the new regional library. So if you've seen the Southwest, you know how beautiful it is. The South Central Library is going to be equally as beautiful and innovative as well. And then we're moving forward with our plans to build the Northeast Regional Library. Those funds have been put forth in the budget that will become effective July 1st as well. So with that, we'll have our entire system of regional libraries complete in our city. And I think that's important in terms of sending a message to our citizens the value of learning, and especially lifelong learning. When you think about health, we're working to become a healthier city through programs like Air Louisville, which uses technology to help people manage their asthma. I got 1,000 volunteers that have a GPS-enabled asthma rescue inhaler, so we know when people are using their inhalers. You can go online and see where the hot spots are for our community. And then we have a respiratory therapist call folks that have an inordinately high use with their inhaler to help them reduce the use of their inhaler, increase the quality of their health, which really shocks people when the government calls and says, would you like for us to help improve the quality of your health? And it actually works. But it's only happening because the power of decentralizing data collection through these GPS-enabled inhalers. That information goes up to the cloud. We then use big data to analyze that and then individualize medical attention as well. So it kind of talks to the importance of all of us understanding our interdependence and interconnectedness as people. We couldn't do this if we were just sole operators. We use the city as a platform for people to reach their potential. We also have another project in health called the Green Heart Project, where we're studying the connection between personal health and environmental health. And we're learning about all kinds of interesting things where we can increase what I call vegetative medicine, which is trees and shrubs, and how it increases air quality. We're actually taking blood samples and urine samples of a dedicated focus group of people, and we're seeing improvements in their health as it relates because of these vegetative barriers we have between busy roads and their houses and their schools. So there's a lot that we can learn from that. I'm also proud of our work with the Metro Council to add e-cigarettes to the city's smoking ban. We're about close, I think, to getting that done. We have a very successful needle exchange program that's leading in the state in terms of health that comes out of that. Unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to have it, but if we do, let's make sure that we increase health and provide access to rehab services as well. So these are some successes that we can point to as it relates to health, but it's no secret that improving the health of 760,000 citizens is a major challenge. And that's true for communities across the country. So the key is we've got to all partner on this and many other issues to the maximum extent that we can. We've got a great partner here, just right over here with Humana. They're working with us both on the bold goal, we call it, for 2020, and our Healthy Louisville 2020 plan as well. So we all got to work on this. And we've got to recognize it is a challenge. There's not simple solutions to these things. And we also have to realize that in a society or in a city, everything is connected. And health is about individual decisions, about diet and exercise. We got a nice healthy lunch today, Greg. Nice job. But it's also about the healthcare system, which we have little control over. And we need more coverage for more citizens delivered more effectively, not less. We need efficiency, we need innovation, and we need cost control in health. There's no question about that. But saving money with healthcare without saving lives, to me, is unacceptable. And that's not good enough for the American people, especially when other countries manage to do both. As a country, we spend 20% of our GDP on health care. That's more than Germany, France, Canada, Japan, and many other countries. They spend about half of what we do on health care as a percentage of their GDP. And they have universal coverage as well. So obviously we're having a lot of debate about health care in our country and coverage. Coverage certainly is an issue. It's lack of efficiency that's the big issue. So we got more than enough money that we're spending on health care. If we're more proactive, if we really put the money up front in population health strategies, that leads to less need for health care down the road. So I hope with all the discussion going on about the Affordable Care Act, and now obviously health care is in the Senate, that we really take a look at reforming the entire system where you have more than enough money to cover everybody. Here in Louisville, we have 100,000 Louisvillians that gained insurance coverage through the Affordable Care Act. So we've got to make sure that all these folks not only are protected, but their health increases, and we're doing preventive work up front so we have no need for the more expensive health care down the road. And we've got to all recognize, obviously, that questions like this do not have an easy answer. We've got to work together, and that brings me to the third value that I outlined 6 years ago, and that has to do with compassion. And that's the one that people kind of snickered at when I talked about, because they said, hey, you're supposed to be a tough elected official, and compassion sounds weak. And I said, well, really, what we find in life is that it's oftentimes more difficult for people to be compassionate and join each other through the heart than it is to be cynical from the couch or snarky from whatever position that you might have. And so people have seen the value of compassion over these last 6 years, I believe, and it's in all of us. All I did was just start emphasizing it a little bit more. And we define compassion as respect for each and every one of our citizens so their human potential is flourishing or thriving. Thomas Merton said in 1958, his definition of compassion would be he sees people walking around shining like the sun. And you see our historical marker at 4th and Muhammad Ali that was then Walnut back in the day that really kind of anchored us in our compassion traditions along with our great interfaith traditions here in this city and the work and core values of Muhammad Ali as well. So to be successful as a city, I think we've got to have ambition. We've got to grow. We've got to have a global perspective, but we also got to have a caring heart. And we've got to embrace our interdependence on each other. I frequently hear people complain about people on the other side of town, this, that, or the other thing. Look, everybody's on our team when it comes to a city. You really don't get to select who moves to your city and who's here. It's like one large, beautiful family. Some might say it's one large, beautiful, dysfunctional family. But it is our family. So the question is, how do we work together on that? And our compassion value has been one of the ways that we've done that. We've become an international leader in compassion through programs like the Give a Day Week of Service, which we just concluded 2 or 3 weeks ago. 180,000 volunteers in acts of compassion this year, a new world record for compassion. Compassion is part of our global brand. We've had approximately 45 cities visit us from around the world now to try to understand how we're bringing compassion to life. And what I believe is that people are longing for reconnection to these human values like compassion and hospitality, kindness and love. And people aren't happy being angry and snarky and divisive with each other. So they're trying to figure out how we, all of us, as leaders, secular leaders, can use these human values to pull people together. And yes, we'll have differences, but let's approach those differences in a respectful way, realizing that nobody's got all the answers and certainly nobody is perfect as well. And I also want to share that compassion is good for business. I like to tell the story of how ComputerShare decided to come to Louisville. We were competing with 42 other cities around the country. And once they decided to come here, about 3 months later, I asked their CEO, I said, why did you choose Louisville? And to my delight, he said, I loved your all's focus on compassion. And ComputerShare, once they're built out, well, when they started, they said we're going to invest $12 million and have 250 jobs. They've increased those numbers now and are investing $32 million and 1,100 jobs in our city. So compassion is good for business. And it also builds what I call our social muscles. And those are the connections between individuals and communities that help us stay together in tougher times. And our society is being challenged in stress in multiple ways that it has not been before due to the times that we're living in right now. So it's really critical to have what I call social muscles, especially when we see leaders in our country, elected and otherwise, that are practicing politics around division and suspicion. You're not supposed to trust somebody that doesn't look like you or doesn't speak the same language. You're not supposed to trust the media. You're not supposed to trust business, whomever it might be. If trust breaks down in a city or our country, chaos ensues. So it's all of our responsibilities to work through these difficult issues and make sure that you still have trust in place so we can develop possibilities and relationships out of that. So we've got to be always a welcoming city and a good, compassionate city as well. Because when I look around our country right now, I see the need for more compassion, not less compassion. And the truth is, I think it's time for a new social compact between government, business, and citizens. School ends for JCPS in 2 weeks. As an example, kids won't go back until August. That does not help them become better learners in this world where lifelong learning is critical. Some kids from advantaged families, they're going to keep learning all summer. Other kids won't pick up a book, won't be stimulated at all. So that long layoff can lead to a summer loss, learning loss, when they go back. So the school calendar is just one example, I believe, of a holdover from a day that was beautiful back when it was in place, and that was an economy that was built on an agrarian society and traditional families, but that's part of our past. It's certainly not part of our present nor our future. So that's just one example of the changes I think that we need to make around a school calendar so that we can adapt to more modern times in order to make sure that we can thrive and make sure that everybody's along for the ride. Because when you see the riots or civil unrest that's happening on the streets of America, when you see the people upset in this last presidential election, the same theme runs through a lot of these. People feel disconnected and they feel hopeless about their position in a positive future. And if we can't figure that out as a country and as a city, we're in for rough days ahead. So we've got to be questioning the way that we do business in our country and the systems that we've designed. They are getting the results for which they have been designed. We are lagging as it relates to things like skill development, healthcare, education. We've got to adapt these things to our more modern times. So a lot of this comes back to the recognizing we are in this together, this value of compassion. You can take a look at what we're doing with our Cradle to Career system as an example. We've created and supported other programs like the Kentucky Manufacturing Career Center, Louisville, Summer Works, and many because we know that if we've got a more prepared workforce, we can attract more businesses and grow the ones we have right now. One of the biggest challenges that we've got in the city right now is we have 30,000 open jobs. Just imagine if we thought we would have been saying that 5, 6, 10 years ago. 30,000 open jobs. That means our economy's doing really well, companies are moving here, so we got to grow faster, and we got to grow a population that can meet these workforce needs faster as well. Think about what's going on with public safety. This is a challenge for us in our city right now, especially as it relates to gun violence, particularly in a handful of high crime neighborhoods. We're investing more than ever in public safety with this recent budget. 80% of the increase over last year goes into public safety. We're going to have more police officers than ever, as well as crime fighting tools and technology, but it's not enough. We have to give more citizens, particularly young men of color, more convincing evidences that they have choices for a positive life ahead. So we do that through programs with our Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, programs like Pivot to Peace. It's an intervention program. Also on your tables there, I left you a one-pager that will outline all of the issues that we're doing through Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. And you'll see it's a 6-pillar system that starts with prevention and intervention, goes through enforcement and reentry. That this is kind of the system of getting everybody on the right path. It is very difficult, as we know. The key is to have a good plan, keep working the plan, and for everybody in this room, in the city, to say, here's how I'm helping everybody get on the right path forward. So you can see a variety of the plans we have there, from Pivot to Peace, to Reimage, to Zones of Hope, to a program called Cure Violence. It's an initiative that helps stop the spread of violence so that violent crime, violence is not a culturally accepted norm in a community. So check that out to understand more about it and make sure that we support our investments in issues like safe and healthy neighborhoods, food security, living wages, affordable housing, etc. Some people say it costs too much. Well, ask what's it costing us now as a society. We're certainly not happy with the way things are going with the results. So we can do more and more. We've got to have new outcomes, and the question is, how do we do it together as well? I am thankful for our city coming together on a lot of these issues and understanding these are complex times. They're also celebrating the wins that we have as a community. The truth is, the city of Louisville is on a major role like we really haven't seen in quite some time relative to the renaissance that you see in the city and the educational gains, et cetera, and we're always going to have challenges. So the question is, how do we come together and make sure that we address those challenges together in a productive way so we can all move forward together. So with that, that's just a little brief overview of the city. And now, Greg, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. So I'll just introduce our two board members who will be asking questions today. We have Joe Arnold and we have Sean Riley. So you have the first question?
We are combing through them right now, but raise your hand if you have any additional ones, and we'll come by and pick them up. The first one, how does any mayor, stop a rising murder rate? What is the future of the police chief? So an easy one to start.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the future of the police chief is solid. We'll start with that one. Crime is very complicated, and you have to take a look at it both in the context of the local situation and the national situation as well. We look at crime as a public health issue. Unfortunately, violent crime is a learned behavior. It's not normal. So we've got a lot of people in the country that have learned that they think the solution to a problem is through a gun. There's over 300 million guns on the streets of America. That certainly does not help. It doesn't, we get into this Second Amendment debate. Second Amendment and hunting is a very different issue than gun issues in our city as well. So, why does violent crime happen? About 2/3 of the gun-related violence in our city is a result of some kind of interaction with illegal drug trade. Why does illegal drug trade take place? Poverty is usually at the root of that. Why is gun violence used to solve issues with illegal guns? Usually it's because a deal has gone bad. Somebody hasn't paid somebody. Somebody sees an easy mark where they can pick up some cash, and then a gun comes out, and then bad things happen. You could put a police officer on every corner, and you still wouldn't stop some of this. And the data does not suggest at all that just having more police automatically reduces crime easily. So it is a complex solution that unfortunately a simple answer is not going to take care of. So where does it start? It starts with healthy families, with kids growing up that have high expectations and some structure and some discipline. And when you take a look at the people involved in violent crime, it's unusual to find a solid family foundation behind a lot of these folks. Oftentimes they come from multi-generational families where crime and violence has been normal. And if you've seen that for 3 or 4 generations, to you, that's as normal as us sitting here having lunch today. So breaking that as a society is difficult. That's why we're investing in our Cradle to Career system. If you come from a disadvantaged area of our city right now and you're showing up at kindergarten and an advantaged child is there, you are 3 years behind at the age of 6 already. So your odds to go down a productive path are pretty small. So we have to invest in our kids early to close these gaps in achievement so that they can have a productive future and a decent job. Most people, when they think about guys selling dope on the corner, think, oh, they must be making a lot of money. The truth is, most of these guys that are out hustling are making between 50 and 100 bucks a day. So it's not like they're getting rich now. There are a few people that are getting rich up the chain that isolate themselves from a lot of the violence, and it's the guys on the street corners that they're ordering what to do. So if you're making 50 or 100 bucks a day, that's $12, $14 an hour. So what can we do to make sure that we're hiring guys like this, getting them off the street? What we can do as a city where we have direct control on it is starting to take some of these guys that have say, okay, I'm giving up on street life. Because if you're hustling dope on the corner, basically you're looking over your shoulder the whole time, and you're going to either go to jail or you're going to be dead. And that's not much of a way to live. But what we can do as a city is when somebody says, okay, I've had enough with this, we can put them to work quickly in our Parks Department, in MSD, et cetera, where we can control some of that. And then the private sector has a role to play in that as well. Now, any city will have several hundred people that create 60 to 80% of the mayhem. Those folks are the target of our federal task force. So LMPD works with FBI, DA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, that we're trying to get the worst of the worst off the street. Frankly, these guys are not interested in changing their lifestyle. So those are the ones you build a case for, you get them off the streets so we can try to have more peaceful streets. So I wish I could stand up here and say, boy, this is really easy. But 3/4 of American cities are experiencing this kind of problem right now. In the quarter that don't, they still have the same amount of illegal drug trafficking going on, but for whatever reason, the industry in those cities is quiet right now. Somehow violence is not used to settle what the scores are. So drugs are a big part of the problem. The other issue with homicides, 15% or so is domestic violence, so that happens behind closed door, and then the balance of it's just kind of unusual stuff. So all I can tell you is that my office, the council, the police department will continue to work 24/7 on this. I think that's really all you can guarantee is that we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep trying new things.
If you had to give your administration a letter grade in regards to dealing with violent crime, what would it be?
Oh, I wish it was as simple as that. Right now, since we've reorganized, overall crime in the city is down 3%. Our shootings are down, I think, 3% or something like that. Homicides are up 10 to 14%, depending on the most recent number. So we're not happy at all, obviously, with homicides, the balance of the activity. 3% can be statistical fluctuation. I'd give our effort grade, high grade on that, but I'll never be happy with the results, no matter if it's crime or no economic development. If you know me at all or our team, I say we can always do more, and we got to move faster. So I think, to expect anybody to guarantee anything in this business where you got so many moving parts is a little bit unrealistic. You want to say, do you have good values? Do you have a good plan? Are you working your plan? Or are you always trying to improve the plan? And are you working hard? So in those areas, I'd give us a high grade.
Kind of following up this question, can you explain your position on promoting Rick Jones for the Police Oversight Board?
Sure. Professor Ricky Jones is head of the Pan-African Studies Center at the University of Louisville. The Commission on Police Accountability is a commission made up of 11 people whose job is to review police procedure after an officer-involved shooting that may or may not involve a death in the community. So what's really important for any board or any commission is to, one, be seen as legitimate in the eyes of the community in terms of having a broad perspective on what the purpose of a commission is. So Ricky, Dr. Jones is obviously an extraordinarily intelligent guy, as evidenced by his position at the university. Some people feel like he's provocative, especially if you're from the white community. Other people from our black community see him as a champion for many of the grievances in history that our black community has endured over the years. So he can be a really strong voice for bringing a different perspective to a board, and he's one of 11 votes. And this is a commission that looks at policy and procedure after the fact. So what I try to do with all of our boards is make sure that we've got good, diverse representation on the board. And sometimes that diversity of opinion does unsettle folks. Well, if that makes us come to a better understanding of the work of the commission and the policy and procedures, I think that's important. And at the end of the day, it's one of 11 votes.
Our next question, we are closing part of Lexington Road to install bike lanes that are almost never used during rush hour. This also makes traffic and air pollution worse. Can you explain that decision?
Yeah, so that means we're not communicating well. The Lexington Road is one of our more dangerous corridors in the city as it relates to accidents. So it's really a safety improvement program by slowing the traffic down, much like we did on the Brownsboro Road diet, also that was done over by Collegiate School as well. And what happens when you do these road projects is what we've learned is everybody freaks out and says the world's coming to an end. And then after they happen, they're like, wow, traffic moves more smoothly now. And so there's massive engineering studies done before these to take a look at the traffic flow. I must admit, when all these happened early in my administration, I also was very skeptical. But what we've seen over the years is that the traffic engineers, their studies turn out to be true. So what we're trying to do is slow down traffic on Lexington Road there, especially if everybody knows where that kind of really sharp turn is around Cave Hill, so there won't be as many accidents there. That's where the data tells us the accident is. As part of narrowing the road, you can put bike lanes on either side of it. Bike lanes continue to baffle me, frankly, in terms of being a source of controversy in the community. If you travel at all, and if you're aware at all what young people want in cities, they want to be able to move throughout a city without owning a car. So cycling is part of that. So as we compete with Nashville and Austin, whatever, and young folks come to town, if we don't have decent transportation and decent bike lanes, we're just written off the list. So we're trying to slow traffic down for more safety. We're trying to do that downtown as well because it's better for restaurants and retailers as well. But it is a change. When we went into a car-based society, our road system was designed where people could get to downtown from the suburbs as fast as possible and then get the heck out of downtown as fast as possible. Obviously, what's happening in our city, as most any other city in the country, is people are moving back to downtowns and to the edge neighborhoods around downtown. So that means people move differently now. Not everybody's driving a car. We've got to make sure we have a decent public transportation system, good sidewalks as well, and then bike lanes where applicable. But the main issue over there is to slow the traffic down and move it faster. So I'd invite everybody to go to the website. All that study's on there, and that will result in improved air quality, actually.
Can I interject a follow-up on that? So maybe this is another communication thing, but what I notice in other places I've lived, a lot of the bike lanes are going in railroad and utility easements, or they're going 2, 3, 4 blocks off of the major arteries. But what a lot of people seem to be noticing in Louisville is they're going on the major arteries. So is that just a communication thing? Are we also putting them through the easements?
Yeah,
or?
we have a whole program called Neighborways, and all this is online too, where you can see how you can go off, let's say, Bardstown Road or Broadway or whatever, 2 or 3 blocks over and just go through the neighborhoods on that. So you want to provide options for folks, and that's always a big consideration where the whole bike program goes. So there's a whole strategic plan around bikes and bike lanes that existed long before I came into office that we're executing. So there's a network throughout the city, both to get to work, but then also to use cycling for exercise as well. We'd love to work with Norfolk Southern owns the bridge that goes to New Albany from Portland, to create a loop downtown that would go across the Big Four Bridge, through New Albany, or through Jeff, Clarksville, and New Albany, come over that bridge, drop off in Portland, so we could have a small loop downtown as well. The railroads are hard to work with. A lot of their regulations kind of exist when back. They're about the strongest operators in the country, and say, sue me. I've got federal rights to do what I want to do. So they're hard to work with. So some cities where you go to, especially out west, you see a lot of bike lanes along the railways. That's not so much of an equivalent situation here. But check out our Neighborways. And we're also about ready to introduce a bike share program. You're starting to see that come up in downtown. This is a great example, and again, I have to thank the council for this. We've got a couple of our council members here, where our money was leveraged about 7 to 1 with federal money, where they come in with the shared bike programs. I think we put in around $300,000. They put in over $2 million or so. So you can see as the visitors come to town, they can bike around. And as I just mentioned earlier, we're having a lot more visitors to town. So they're going to want to have good sidewalks, bike lanes through downtown, et cetera. So it's just kind of all part of a system of building a modern city.
Given your beliefs in transparency, why did your administration settle the Bowman Field tree issue with Metro Parks without getting any input from citizens and Metro Council?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I know the Regional Airport Authority was working with the neighborhoods over there in a long time on many different situations. My emphasis on that was, like when this thing started, it's like, okay, you take a tree down, a tree replaces it. 1 to 1. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, a lot of the trees that were replaced were mature trees. They've been there for 20 or 30 years. So now the ratio is you take a tree out, you put 5 in. It was a mistake, I think, that the council folks, it was Bill Hollander and Brandon Cohn, were not notified in advance. I wasn't notified in advance either. But so it's people making decisions. But the neighborhoods were involved a lot, have been involved a lot in Bowman Field and with tree canopy. And this is another example of kind of change. Trees get taller. The instruments on landings instruments on airplanes change, so it becomes a safety issue. So do you let the trees grow higher and then you reduce the usage of your airport, or do you take the trees down, put them with lower trees that will grow a lower height and keep using the airport? So it's just one of the many trade-offs that you make by living in a city.
This questioner writes, my wife and I would like to live downtown, but the downtown core still lacks essential retail services, groceries, cleaners, etc. What specifically is the city doing to promote these retail services? What tax incentives or other subsidies are we offering?
Yeah. So whomever this person is, I hope they're happy with what we're seeing as our density strategies downtown. So retail follows rooftops. And if you talk to the retail industry, they'll tell you that every day. So when you see the really large expansion in multi-unit residential that's taking place downtown, a couple of years from now, downtown is going to be a very different place in terms of people living here. So you've got the big Omni project with not just the 600 hotel rooms, but the 250 apartments on that. You've got on Main Street 2 projects. They're going to be 600 new apartments in the old 800 building. You got on 4th Street, across where the old Jewish hospital back office was. So you're seeing huge increase in downtown residences. That's what's going to drive sustainable retail. Now, in the Omni project, they have a urban grocery in there that I think's 15,000 square feet. So that's going to be a start, and you can get something of everything, but it's not going to be like going to a 150,000 square foot Kroger store. My parents live downtown. My mom gets in a car and she drives 3 miles over to Bardstown Road. So the reality is, if you move downtown from the suburbs, let's say you live off of Limekiln Lane, you're driving to Holiday Manor, you're driving 4 or 5 miles. But some people expect when they live downtown to be able to walk to a grocery store, and we'll get there. Omni will be a start, and as we get closer to 10,000 or so residents downtown, you'll see a downtown grocery store as well. I am very concerned when these grocery stores close, like Kroger's closed over in South Louisville off 4th Street. That becomes a real issue, especially when you have the amount of senior housing over there where people walk to the grocery stores. So we like to have a grocery store within 1 mile of where everybody lives in these more dense areas of town. These private companies, though, they want to make a profit, so if they're not making a profit, they move on. So then our question is how much do we want to incent retail, and where is it going to locate? The face of retail, which is different from groceries, is changing incredibly fast because of online shopping. So you're seeing massive layoffs in the retail sector all over the country right now. Groceries are a different issue, though.
This next one's kind of a three-part question. So first question, what is the anticipated economic benefit of the refurbished convention center, the downtown area? Second question would be, what is the status of the new proposed soccer stadium, and what financial challenges have been identified?
Okay. The convention center rehab is about a $220 million project. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head here. I do know, tourism is about 5-6% of our total economic base. It's growing every year. The reason why the convention center is expanding is that it allows us to increase our addressable market from about 65% of all conventions to about 80 to 85% of all conventions by having a larger contiguous space. I think it's 200,000 square feet or so. So we're going to have a lot more conventions come into town. So you'd have to ask, well, is that a smart thing to do? I would just say, well, how did the market react to it? When I talk about 25 new hotels under construction or planned in the city, you'd have to say, well, the market responded pretty well to that. So between what they see in more conventions, which are already booked, by the way, and bourbonism, these folks want to be here. So it's a sound economic argument. It adds a lot of vitality, obviously, to a city. It really allows us to punch over our weights in the restaurant business. Our local food scene, our restaurant scene is always top 5 in the country, top 10 in the United States. And a lot of that is because we just have more visitors coming through here than most cities our size, and our local food scene is fantastic. The soccer stadium, this will end up well no matter what happens in terms of the land over there. So obviously the soccer team, Louisville City, has been really well received in our city. We've been number 2, number 3 in attendance in the league the first 2 years that we were in there. If you want to advance in Major League Soccer and pro soccer, you have to have a dedicated soccer stadium, and the USL has been very clear on that with the owners. So we've worked with them on a variety of projects. On this particular project, the USL, and it's obvious to all of us, the stadiums do best when they're located kind of in a downtown area that's walkable. There's restaurants, there's bars around it, etc. And so as we looked at various parcels of property around town, the particular parcel that was chosen was one that I'm sure many of you all have noticed before that is certainly not consistent with the vibrancy that you see in Nulu and Butchertown and other areas of town. So it's an old industrial kind of semi-blighted area. So we worked to get options on the 40 acres of land that make up this property. And so now it's up to the owners. They need to perform in 2 ways. One is they have to put private equity, their own money, into the stadium for the finances to work out. And then the state has to approve a TIF, tax increment financing district, in addition to the money that the city's putting forward for all this to be possible. people say, well, isn't this like the Yum Center, and there's some concerns over that? It's really an apples and oranges type of thing. The cost of the stadium is about $40 million compared to the Yum Center. It was about $250. There's private owners' money going into this as well. And then we, the city, all of us that live in Louisville, we have the collateral. The collateral is the land. So we won't get hurt on a project like this. If the soccer team cannot perform for whatever reason with the stadium, it will be my suggestion that we go ahead and exercise the options on the land so that the city then owns the 40 acres of land. The city has the options on the land. And that is prime development territory that people from all over the world will be interested in coming and developing. So that's a very good development for the city.
Do you think the promises made to voters to merge the city and county have been realized?
I'm really happy that there's merged city-county government because of our ability to speak as one city on so many issues, particularly economic development. When a company wants to locate in your city, they want to talk to one entity about incentives, real estate development, workforce development, and prior to merger, of course, it was two different voices, city recruiting, county recruiting. I mean, it's ridiculous if you're a business person looking to locate somewhere and you're really trying to figure out who's on first base. So it's allowed us to consolidate that effort, obviously public safety as well, and I think it's really binded us as a city. All parts of the city, from south to east to west, that we're all in this here together, and it also has kind of elevated our status because of increased population. We're higher up on the list of cities, and federal money comes with that also. So to me, it's been a really good thing.
This is kind of a follow-up to an earlier question. If Dr. Jones is appointed in order to give diversity a voice, will you be appointing a spouse of an officer?
That would be great. You know, when you take a look at who makes up boards, if somebody has a voice that they want on the vote, please encourage them to self-nominate or somebody else nominate them. All you do is you go to our public website, Boards and Commissions, and then it asks you what you're interested in, what your background in, and then you go on from there. So that's the kind of diversity that we want on each and every one of our boards. Boards are interesting. You know, people think that citizens get something out of being on a board. I think there's one board that pays $100 a meeting. These are volunteer positions. We try constantly to get people to be on boards. So if you know folks that are interested in board service or you're interested in board service, please help us out.
Another follow-up to your comments earlier on crime. If good quality youth development programs help reduce violence, why aren't more dollars available to support those programs?
Well, it's a balance. Obviously, as I mentioned, 80% of the additional revenue in this budget is going toward public safety. We increased the money going into the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. I think it was about 80% to police, 20% to safe and healthy neighborhoods as well. Our community centers are open longer hours now also. So, you know, this is a good question in terms of how you see people kind of debate this issue. Some people say, you got to get tough on crime. And tough on crime means more police officers, people putting people away in jail for longer periods of time. That really hadn't worked out so well for us as a society. Then you have other people saying we got to invest more in our kids. Frankly, the voices are much louder for more police enforcement in a community than they are for our kids. But that's the reason why we started our Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. That did not exist before. And the vision on that is that every neighborhood is safe and healthy. And the vision on that also is that we get these young folks that are born in really tough, adverse situations where they don't have access that Advantage Family have so that we can narrow that gap. It's also why we've spent so much time developing this cradle-to-career system of lifelong education so that we can narrow the gaps through making sure that disadvantaged kids have access to social and emotional learning, physical and mental health services that many of us take for granted that, frankly, a lot of these families don't know how to provide to their kids. And we might wish that wasn't the case, but it is the case. So the question for us as a society is, what do we do? Do we just kind of tell them, you know, you got to lift yourself up by the bootstraps? The reality is a lot of these folks don't know where the shoe store is, okay? So there's a lot more capacity building that needs to take place. Do I wish that was the case? No. But is it the reality that we have to deal with in our city and every city in the country? Yes, it is. So when I talk about changing systems to adapt to the world that we live in. These are the type of things that we have to be realistic about as a people and then get to work on it. And then for each and every one of our citizens to say, what can I do to help? How can I reach out and help people as well?
The loss of Walmart was a big blow to the West End. What is the city doing to bring another major retailer to that area?
So a lot of these questions are very deficit-oriented today, by the way. Here's what I would say. Wow, look what's happened in West Louisville development in the last 6 months. Waterfront Park Phase 4 is going to be going from 9th Street to 15th Street along the river, about $35–40 million project. We competed with 45 other cities around the country for a Choice Neighborhood federal grant. We were one of 6 cities to win that $29.5 million federal grant that will end up redoing the Russell neighborhood, $200–300 million investment into a mixed-income, mixed-use community. Finally, we were able to get the YMCA deal done on the east side of 18th and Broadway. And then one of our great local companies, Passport, said, you know what, I want to put our headquarters on the west side of 18th and Broadway, bringing 600 jobs there today, be 1,000 ultimately in 5 to 10 years. So what we've seen, and then a lot of good stuff happening along the Muhammad Ali corridor as well, what we've seen now is the announcement, and these projects will all happen, more investment in West Louisville, certainly since the riots of 1968, maybe since the flood of 1937. So think about that in the context of your all's lives. So my hope and our plan is that all of that investment then will help generate the economic activity that leads to more retail in West Louisville. And so we're seeing great explosion in entrepreneurship in West Louisville, particularly as it relates to food, issues around chef space. There'll be more restaurants, sit-down restaurants opening in West Louisville as well. So ultimately, you've got to build this economy that sustains these retail operations.
Can't thank you enough for offering yourself up to all of our various and somewhat random questions at times. This is a follow-up for your last point there. What you foresee as Louisville's greatest economic challenge the next 4 to 5 years, perhaps the greatest opportunity as well.
Well, there's no question, it's workforce. When you talk to companies about their number one reason for locating anywhere, it's quality of the workforce. Some people might say, oh, it's taxes. It's not taxes at all. Look at the most, the highest performing economies in our country are in high tax states. California, New York, New Jersey. Why is the economy rolling there? Because the workforce is there. So we are transitioning our economic development strategy in our city to one what we call is focused on advanced industries. Advanced industries focus on innovation and globalization. If you position your economy in around those two factors, innovation and globalization, you got a great ride ahead of you for the next several decades. Because our city was over-reliant on manufacturing for a long period of time. And what happened was we had a 30-year decline in the median wage in our city because of the loss of manufacturing jobs that paid, these were high-paid union jobs with pensions that paid significantly above the median wage. As those left the city, they were replaced with lower wage jobs. So for whatever reason, that wasn't talked very much about in our city before. We said we're going to take this head on. And so we reorient our strategy around these two factors I mentioned, again, innovation and globalization in 5 different economic development clusters. And what you're seeing right now is a real renaissance in our city of economic growth. You don't have to believe me, just look around. So these 30,000 open jobs are the key. So what can we do about that? 1, make sure our high school system, our college systems are aligned with the need of our workforce. So we got all kind of programs around that. I mentioned that earlier today. And then we have to have more inbound migration to our city. So like all of you all in here, optimist of our city, despite the tone of your questions, is what you have to say is, my God, the city of Louisville is doing tremendously well. We were kind of like positioned to be that next it city, the medium-sized city in our country. So get your kids, get your grandkids to move back here, especially if they got a college degree or a 2-year degree or some kind of specialty, because they can get a job right now. So it's a combination of growing more of our own, and you see what we've done by going from 39% to 50% with our college degree attainment, and then getting people to move back to the city. So it is all about workforce.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Last thing I want to say is I would encourage everybody to have a winning attitude. When I ran for office in Louisville, one of the things I said is, one of the challenges that Louisville has, because we have not grown as rapidly as other cities. People say, oh, we're doing fine. We compare ourselves to ourselves. And we did grow year over year. But if you're in business and you compare yourself just to yourself, that is a solid way to go out of business. Compare yourself to who's doing the best in the country, and then say, that's where we need to be. So for some reason, some groups of Louisvillians are always kind of saying, oh, we're not doing good enough. We're kind of moving on from that attitude. And when you see what we're doing in terms of economic performance, investment in our city, our education, our housing strategies, these are all things that winning cities do with great trajectory. So what I would ask everybody, if we haven't done a good enough job communicating with you all, we will redouble our efforts to do that. But please be part of spreading the good news about Louisville, because we need more of that so people come to fill these open jobs. And so hopefully you see that kind of momentum. So as I give a charge to you all as you leave the room, please be part of that. I mean, we're going to be realistic about our challenges. I'm never going to sugarcoat things. But we also got to sell our city, and we've got a great city. Thank you, guys.
I feel pretty confident we all learned something that we didn't already know when we walked in today, and that we feel more connected to the city we all care about. So thank you, Mayor Fischer. And we have a gift for you. This is a mint julep cup, very timely. Very timely. And we hope you enjoy that. So again, thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out. Thanks, everybody. We are adjourned.